Well, hello everyone. This is Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of this fascinating series concerning holes in the narrative, why the standard Islamic narrative is sketchy. Today, we are going to take another look at another Islamic claim when it comes to the depictions of Muhammad in artwork. And believe it or not, our brother Mel is going to show us clear evidence that not only Muhammad was depicted in pieces of arts throughout the history of Islam, but that Islamic art itself actually depicted Muhammad in those developments and those products that have been, I should say, done throughout the centuries since the alleged rise of Islam. And with that in mind, I want to invite our brother Mel back again to our virtual studios. And thank you, Mel, of course, for the wonderful work that you have done. It seemed like we are going to, get a lot of wonderful comments concerning this.
It's great to be back. I think this is probably one of the key videos because obviously this is a hot topic for many Muslims. Many Muslims today think that it's wrong to depict Muhammad in art, and they might be very surprised to find that Muslims centuries ago had no problem depicting Muhammad in art. It seems to be just a recent phenomenon that Muhammad is not depicted in art, and even when he is, he's veiled and so on. But actually, if we go way back to the earliest centuries, we find that they depicted him pretty much like anyone else, and there was no distinction made apart from the fact that maybe he is depicted with a halo, but so were his companions. So it's going to be quite an interesting look. So if we start, I just point out where I got some of this material from there in this slide. And here's one from 1000 AD.
And this is a famous one, by the way. You see it a lot.
Yes, yeah. So you can see Muhammad is depicted with a halo, and he's talking to a group of people. What's interesting, just taking a look at the people here, they seem to be darker skinned, because in the next slide I'm going to show you, there was another version of this done, and it's interesting how it has changed. Mm-hmm. Notice what's happened?
Yeah.
They have whitewashed the people to make them all, white. They got, so that might reflect maybe a change in people's outlook in that time. But what's interesting is there's nothing particularly divine or even verging on anything divine about Muhammad. He's just depicted like any of the other human beings. Mm-hmm. His face is showing. He's just an ordinary human being. He's on a platform. But apart from that, there's nothing special about him, essentially. He's depicted just like any other human being.
And it's interesting, in the first one, they're saying he is on Mount Ararat. And so there's a confusion here. Ararat, for instance, near Turkey. If they meant Arafat, they misspelled it, or it could be a connection between the two. So you wonder if this was north, indeed, or somewhere else.
Yeah. And, I don't know for certain if the source where I got this, whether they made a typo. So I'd obviously need to double check on that score. But it's interesting that we could be talking about another element here where, as I say, it started as one thing and became something else.
Make sure you mention a footnote that I did point it out.
Yeah. So here is another one. This is from 1307 AD, or the 14th century. And you can see that Muhammad is depicted here in a sort of more exalted way. So we have an angel appearing above him, putting the seal of the prophet on him. The camels seem to be bowing, and so do the men to his right. They seem to be reverencing him, and so on. Mm-hmm. So it's a step up from the first one. So in the first one, he's just depicted as a human being. Here is being depicted as being a unique human being. It's not quite worshiping him, but it's not far off it. It's certainly exalting him, I would say.
Right.
Now, if we look at this one here, again, we can see it's the 14th century. His face is depicted. It's a familiar scene. Angel Gabriel is visiting him. Okay, so apart from that, there's no light radiating from Muhammad, so he's still depicted as a relative human being. Okay, in this one, it's quite interesting. You'll notice that many of the people in here, in this picture, are depicted as Asians or Eastern Asians.
That's true. Yeah, they do look. Even Muhammad himself looks like an Asian to me.
Yeah. Now, I've looked into that. I would suggest that that at that time, it just depicts, I think, the politics of the time, and the rulers of the time were depicting him more like themselves. I would suggest it doesn't mean that Muhammad himself or the early followers of Islam were from Central or Eastern Asia. I think it just reflects the rulers, but it's interesting nonetheless. Here's another one. Now here we have sort of a move more towards a mythological idea of Muhammad, because he's on the Burak, and so it's kind of moving into fantasy land stuff, you know. And apart from that, he's still sort of depicted as an ordinary human being, but kind of you're now seeing a sort of progression. He's been kind of brought from sort of a normal human being into a kind of mythological type of world. If we look at this one, 1320, as you can see, his face is still visible. Now there may be paint lost from this painting, perhaps, but it could be that there's light radiating from him, or meant to be depicted around him there. I'm not sure. But relatively speaking, he's depicted in a realistic way. His face certainly showing. If we move to this one here, which is a little bit hard to see maybe, but this is Muhammad born as a baby, and at the head of Muhammad, there is light radiating from him. So now we're kind of getting the indication of him being like a Buddha and an enlightened one. And it's very similar to the nativity scene, and all the people around seem to be sort of prostrating towards Muhammad as if he were a god. Certainly there's that indication. And you notice that it's in 1413 AD, 15th century.
And it doesn't look like it's in Arabic, actually, the writing.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So it would possibly be Persian, do you think? Or
it's either that or somewhere from the East, technically speaking.
Yeah. Okay, this is another one, 1436. You can see Muhammad is on a burak there on the right-hand side. He doesn't just have a halo, his whole body is radiating light. So he's certainly raised to a higher level now than the other human beings to the left that only have a little bit of a radiation coming from their heads. So what's been suggested that he is the source of the light rather than being just one of many receiving the light. So there's a certain move towards divinization. And look at the location of where this was drawn in Herat, Afghanistan, a place that was formerly a Buddhist country. So we can see clearly they are taking Buddhist ideas and applying it to Islam, and it's permeating Islam.
Right.
And here's another one from 1436, similar idea, radiating light from Muhammad. And what's interesting now is there's a new development. Muhammad's face becomes finally veiled from around 1500. So we're only talking about 500 years ago. In Ottoman areas, images began to show Muhammad with his face covered by a veil, or in some cases replaced by golden flames. His face was not obscured in every depiction, though, and while the tradition of depicting him in human form waned, it never died. So there is, it's very hard to see, but in this one, at the center, you have Muhammad veiled, and you can see the radiant light coming from him. Many Muslims think today that for 1400 years, Muhammad was either never depicted or there was an attempt to veil his image in some way. But as we can see here, this is an innovation. This is not a tradition going way back. They cannot go much further than 500 years ago. And this should really waken up a lot of Muslims who are watching that actually you've been told something that is not true historically. This is a late development, the idea of veiling Muhammad, and it's probably connected to the Sufis. It seems to be them that brought in this idea of veiling. It had a symbolic meaning, but principally his body is still visible. It's not done in an effort to not paint an image of Muhammad, as the hadiths would indicate, say that Muhammad said you're not allowed to paint any human being. There's no recognition of a hadith of that nature. So this is hugely troubling, because you kind of have to question, well, when were the hadiths written that said that Muhammad banned all painting of human beings? It might suggest that actually these hadiths were written sometime after this time rather than before it. It certainly would make more logical sense.
Absolutely. And I think we're reaching the conclusion of this particular episode. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my verdict, if you look at the earliest one that we saw and the latest one, we can see there's Muhammad depicted as a human being in the earliest one, and in the final one, we see him depicted essentially like a Buddha, like a god. We definitely can see progression, and this really throws a wrench into the machine of Islam in terms of the sin. So I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, brother. As always, we appreciate the efforts and also the findings of your research. Hopefully everyone has been enjoying this. Please remember to send us comments and interactions so we can go ahead and respond to them, or maybe even we can use them as a substance for future shows to either deal with those comments or objections, or maybe even ways to try to interact with us, because I'm sure this will open a Pandora's door and there'll be a lot of discussions around this. Whatever the case might be, we want to remind you of this. There are holes in the narrative. Until next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel CIRA International and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.